What up? All my scientists, my artists, my philosophers, my geneticists, my roboticists, my biologists, my archaeologists, my astronomers. Let's get busy. This has been Busy from the Burbs. Chip.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Busy from the Burbs, broadcasting to you from Osaka, Japan. I'm joined by my co-host, Trailer Park Master Chef Alan Moore. AJ McComb is off today. Today we're joined by our special guest, Mr. Dan Cowell. Mr. Dan Cowell is a digital nomad. We're going to get into that, what that means. He's currently a developer, developing all over Asia, developers, but this is definitely not a Steve Ballmer type of guy. This is a guy who knows his shit. He's used to moving in and out of what effectively might be called third world countries or otherwise.
By definition.
Right, by definition, right? And very, very comfortable in dealing with people from a variety of backgrounds, operating in a variety of languages. I mean, you're basically kind of like, I don't know, it kind of has the hallmarks of like a James Bond spy kind of persona.
Yeah, my dad is convinced that the whole life is just a cover for me working for ASIO, but that's beside the point.
Right, and it would be a great cover too, because oftentimes I guess CIA, they pose as diplomats or they'll pose as businessmen. You know, they're operating in other countries under the auspices of doing business, when in fact they're gathering intelligence. So it's good to know that it's kind of cool to know that we have a super spy on the program for the first time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, actually,
if you don't mind me asking, I'm assuming, are you from Australia originally?
Yes, I am.
I noticed that your accent fades in and out somewhat.
Yeah,
is that because that you are used to moving back and forth between so many countries that it kind of just starts falling off a little bit, or?
Yeah, that's part of it. I also had the pleasure of spending a year in Texas as a kid.
Mm.
Oh, cool.
So I've seen a bit of the US, and yeah, just after enough travel, you tend to start to lose your accent.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about what is it to be a digital nomad? What is that? What does that mean?
Okay, so really there's two key things to being a digital nomad. One is that you have total freedom to go where you want, when you want, and do what you want in those places. Mm-hmm. But you also have total personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. There's nobody to hold your hand along the way. If you get sick in a foreign country where you don't speak the language and you don't know how good the hospital services are, that's on you. Mm-hmm. There's no calling in sick to work and saying, look, can't come into the office today. I'm going to go down the street and pick up some medicine and crawl under the covers and cry. Mm-hmm. If I don't go to work, the bills don't get paid.
Right.
And I've got to either structure my life in a way that allows for sick days and allows for contingencies, or I just, you just got to work through it.
Right. Now, from what I gather, and I've done some reading about the digital nomad movement before, this takes place mostly in Asia.
It's taking place all over the world, actually. Prague and Barcelona are popping up as two big digital nomad hotspots. Mm-hmm. Definitely in the early days, it really started in Southeast Asia, places like the Philippines, Thailand especially. Mm-hmm. The typical image of a digital nomad is someone sitting on a beach with their laptop with a coconut looking out over the ocean. Yeah. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever actually tried doing that, but it doesn't work, and anyone that tries to tell you it does is lying.
It's full of shit.
The last thing you want is sand in your keyboard.
Oh, God.
The glare on the screen blinding you, and
sunburn all over your body.
Yeah, and that's on a good day. On a bad day, there's no Wi-Fi.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's the killer is no Wi-Fi. You need your Wi-Fi.
You have to deal
So
with
you
that
basically speaking, like you're like a very highly skilled independent contractor that just does your own shit and doesn't answer to anybody.
There are
In layman's terms.
In layman's terms, that's one approach. There are multiple approaches to being a digital nomad.
Yeah. Are you like a mercenary? Would you consider yourself like a digital mercenary, or does that entail? No, that entails like a military. You're fulfilling in going. You're not seeking to achieve any military objectives. I mean, you're a businessman.
Well, I'm seeking to achieve lifestyle and financial objectives.
Right. Yeah. I guess those could be reinterpreted as like, using military strategy terms or whatever. But
if you had a fetish for that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I just happened to be on a podcast surrounded by people who had military backgrounds, I could say that I had a
weird.
mission.
How did you find yourself here, Dan? Surrounded by former Marines.
well,
It's
I
kind
ran
of suspect.
Yeah. Gee, I wonder what my purpose for putting myself in this situation could be.
Well, Dan and I met at Hacker News. So, Hacker News is a meetup that takes place, I'm presuming, not just in Osaka. This is like a worldwide movement. Hacker News is a great service that's put on by YT Combinator, which is an incubator for startups. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah.
Right. So that Dan and I met at a meeting in Osaka, and then one thing led to the other, and here we are today. So one of the main pillars of being a digital nomad is this concept known as arbitrage. Can you tell us what that is, what that means?
Yeah, sure. At its core, arbitrage is earning money in a strong economy and spending it in a weaker one. So the level of lifestyle that I can have on, for example, $2,000 US a month is much higher in, say, Vietnam than it is in Manhattan. Not that you could actually live
absolutely.
in Manhattan. I think that's like the entry level for having your own corner to sleep on at night.
Right. Yeah.
You can get like a shoebox in an alley for like $500,000.
For $2,000, you can pay your sack tax for the month, which lets you cart around all your belongings.
Yeah.
It's your tax to be in the city.
Yeah. So $2,000 in Asia or Prague or Barcelona goes a lot further than it does in Tokyo or New York or London. Most of my clients are in the US or in Europe. I've got a couple in Australia and one or two like offshore firms that are also established in Southeast Asia who I do work for their Southeast Asian branches.
Some of these countries that you're going to are, I wouldn't say they're maybe outright dodgy, but they're not exactly the safest places on Earth. Are you under arms when you're traveling? Do you acquire weapons when you get in country? How are you protecting yourself and your property when you get into these places?
I actually don't have that much concern about property theft or crime, primarily because the profile of crime is very different in places like this compared to in places like, for example, the US. I'd be much more concerned about things like a violent mugging or basically any situation where I could be properly injured in somewhere like the States versus somewhere like Southeast Asia. Petty theft, there's definitely a lot more of it. I mean, you've got to treat your belongings with a lot of caution. Living in somewhere like Vietnam or Thailand, definitely be very careful about drugs. They are very strict in Thailand and Singapore. I'm not particularly deep into that scene, but I know people who have got some horror stories, either from having been set up by people who are on the take from the police, or just having the police themselves plant stuff.
Oh, wow. So you'll actually have citizens who are like watchdogs for the cops that'll plant stuff on foreigners?
Yeah. Or there'll be
man.
a dealer in the street who's offering people, like offering tourists, say, weed or ecstasy.
Yeah, I've had that happen in Jamaica on an unrelated note of the world. I've like every time I go to Jamaica or something for a cruise, you end up having like 300 people ask you if you want to buy weed. I've never ever bought off of one of those people in my life.
Yeah,
It's the worst idea ever.
Well, think
Good
about
rule
it.
of thumb to not, but yeah, go ahead. Ben.
Yeah, well, think about it from like a foreign policy perspective. I don't know how common this is, but if I'm a third world country and I'm looking to gain a bit of leverage on the U.S. to extract a certain amount of money, what's the best way to go about doing that? You know, I'm not saying that they do this, okay? I'm just spitballing here. I'm speculating. This could be total bullshit and probably is. But what I would do is I would I would put the call, okay, we got to do, protocol 88 or 66, whatever, and have the cops go out, do this, and then suddenly now it's an international incident. Now the State Department, who you've been trying to interact with about this new economic deal, who you haven't been able to resolve any issues with. Now suddenly you have, a chip in your pocket that you can use as leverage to get them to agree to your terms or soften.
$2,000 goes a lot further.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, so Digital Nomad, you have a community out there of people that are doing this, right? Are you in direct competition with these people? Is competition friendly? Is it does it get nasty? I mean, like, how would you characterize that dynamic?
Okay, so one of the key hallmarks of the digital nomad movement is most of us are quite optimistic about life and business.
Yes.
We have what we call an abundance mindset, which is there's plenty of money out there provided you bring value to the table. Mm-hmm. And there's enough to go around for everybody to be quite well off. There's a bunch of different people who run all kinds of different businesses in our community. So you've got people like me who are programmers, you've got designers, you've got video producers, you've got people who run life coaching seminars and podcasts. Mm-hmm. You've got physical product people who are doing manufacturing in somewhere like China and selling goods out of a contract logistics firm in Europe and in the US. Mm-hmm. So while there is a certain amount of overlap, I wouldn't say that a certain industry is like saturated. And regardless, we're not really competing with each other so much as we're competing with everybody else in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. So there's quite a lot of support within the community for people and their different businesses. And a lot of people tend to form partnerships when they can that support each other. Like, for example, I came into Saigon and I found a designer who was based here. And we started sending work each other's way, like whenever he had a project that needed some dev work or I had a project that needed some design. We set up basically a micro agency, and there was nothing really formalized, but
it's like work share, kind of.
Yeah.
So, are you in a number of those types of relationships with different business people there, whereby if they have work, they'll send it your way. If you have work, you'll send it their way?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, my business has been taking off recently, so I've started contracting out a lot of the development tasks that I get in, where I serve as the relationship with the client. And I manage a team of developers, either nomadic or not. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to really shift into more of a managerial role, which is obviously the only way that you can scale a kind of a freelancing business.
Right.
You're actually like able to contract other programmers and producers and things of that nature underneath you.
Absolutely.
So you can actually start making more money. That's amazing. That is such a smart way to start living. If you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you started this, and like what was the first like country that you went to?
Okay, so I was 23, 22 when I left home. Yeah, it would have been 22. and I went straight to Japan because I'd been there before on holidays. And I can still remember the day when I was sitting in a Tokyo coffee shop in 2011, looking down at the streets, looking at all the people going to and from work, and kind of the hustle and bustle that's sitting in front of me, and thinking to myself, I wonder what it would be like to live here. Those were the exact words went through my mind, and that just kind of stuck with me. So in 2013, when I had the opportunity, I applied for a working holiday visa, and popped over to Osaka, where I ran the band, and from there it's just been an ongoing journey.
So Japan was kind of like the first jumping off point of inspiration for this. But when were you first exposed to the digital nomad movement? When did you first come to hear about this? When you moved to Osaka, or
while I was in Osaka, I was starting to look for opportunities to kind of expand my business and kind of look at ways to improve the lifestyle a bit. I love traveling, and I certainly want to return to Japan because I love living there. But I also wanted to see the rest of the world while I had the opportunity.
Right.
So I found a podcast called the Tropical MBA Podcast by Dan and Ian. I'll give you a link to stick in the show notes. And they kind of, they're one of the superstar pairs in the digital nomad community. They've had 3 or 4 businesses together, primarily physical product based.
Okay.
And the community kind of self-organizes around those guys. They operate a membership site called the Dynamite Circle, which is great for people kind of wanting to network a bit, to get started. I found that I outgrew it a bit, but it was definitely a great way to kind of jump into the community, feet first, kind of really...
That's called dynamitecircle.com?
Yeah.
Cool.
And
so if you're listening right now and you're interested in becoming a digital nomad, apparently dynamitecircle.com is the place to go.
Yep, it's a private community, so it's by membership. It's by membership application only. Something that's a bit more accessible is a project by a friend of mine, Peter Levels, and he runs hashtag Nomads and Nomad List. So if you just search for Nomad List,
let's see. I'll Google it right now while we're sitting here.
Now, what's the bare minimum to start up? If there's somebody out there listening that has some technical acumen, or they're good at design, or they're good at whatever it is, what would you suggest? They're saying to themselves, I want to do this. I want to be a digital nomad. I want to, I don't know, go to wherever and live this lifestyle.
Okay.
What's the setup? What's the basic starting requirements?
Okay, so the basically you need a skill that's in demand, and then you need to be able to sell it. A lot of people have the first and they struggle with the second. And if you don't have any sales skills, you're really going to struggle, because you are running a business. Whether it's just you freelancing, picking up a contract here or there, or you've got 10 staff and you're growing like mad, you are running a business and you're selling yourself and your skills. So if you don't currently have sales experience, I'd seriously consider taking a sales course, so that you're in a position to really market yourself when you get out there. A lot of, because being a digital nomad is by definition location independent, you can start getting yourself set up right now before you leave home. A lot of people just say, I sold all my stuff. I just bought a plane ticket and made it all up as I went along. While for a certain type of personality that can be a great kick in the pants, you never hear about the people who crashed and burned, and that's because they're not out there telling you about it.
I'm sorry to kind of tangent this real quick though. Do you see these broken cases? I mean, you must. You must see a lot of success, but I mean, there must be failure there that you're seeing as well.
It can't all be a winning game. It's a lot of risk to kind of just pick up your roots and hope that your skills are going to carry you far, you know?
Yeah, I do hear about it. I hear about it quite a lot. And I hear about it probably more from a certain category of person, which is you've got people who have sold everything, left home, and they've basically decided to go on a perpetual holiday with a bit of work sprinkled in there. Now, you can scrape by working, 6 hours a week, but you've got to work your ass off for those 6 hours. And the people that I hear about who crash and burn, they've done the backpacker trail. They're in a new hostel every 2 weeks. They're traveling around like mad, but not doing a whole lot of work. And to make this sustainable, you need to earn an income, and it's got to be an income that can support your lifestyle. So it's not all glamorous, like traveling around to a new city every day, eating out at the local restaurants and going for a walk by the river in the morning. Like sometimes you got to wake up at 4 a.m. to make a sales call with someone who's in an inconvenient time zone. Sometimes you don't get a weekend.
Right. There has to be some discipline involved.
Absolutely.
In someone's nasty body to get them up to do the work that they have to do to pay the bills. Now, back to startup. How much money would you suggest someone travel with out there? What about medical? I mean, obviously you're going to need to get all your shots. What is it like dealing with healthcare in these countries? These are all bases that you have to cover, right? Malaria, is that an issue?
Okay, so it depends on the kind of work you're doing and where you're doing it. Obviously, you'll have to research your particular itinerary very, very carefully. And none of this can be considered medical advice because I'm not qualified in any way.
Okay, disclaimer, everyone.
But you haven't died yet, so you probably haven't died.
I'm doing
so basically, you're an authority.
Yeah, basically. I'm doing a bit of work for a health-based startup at the moment, and we were in a meeting yesterday, and I was entering some content about beta blockers, and I just put in the description field, yeah, they block your betas, and everyone's like, yeah, you basically got it. You can be a doctor now.
You nailed it. Yeah,
nailed it.
That's like the clinical definition.
Yeah,
I think
it is. I believe so.
I think if you read enough stuff online, anyone could be a doctor.
Yeah. WebMD that shit.
WebMD all day.
Yeah. So basically, the thing about medical care in a place like this is it's all about finding where to go. There's thousands and thousands of clinics all over the city, and probably one or two of them would be at Western standards for hygiene and talent. One of the things that I always do is I look at the closest medical centers to, for example, every city has an area where all the embassies tend to be.
Right.
They're all kind of clustered around one section of the city. And so I always look for the medical centers over that way because I know that they're typically catered towards diplomats or expats. And they'll typically have a more Western level of service.
Right. No hepatitis at those hospitals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does suck. It really sucks getting sick while you're traveling. I've been there. I've in both Japan and here in Saigon. I've had somewhat ironically, I had food poisoning in Japan, and I found it harder to get medical care there than I did here in Southeast Asia.
Are they more likely to speak English in Southeast Asia versus Japan?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. There's a lot of English here. And it's lucky that there's a lot of English here because Vietnamese is fucking impossible.
Yeah.
I've tried to learn. I've tried very, very hard, but it's just not happening.
Yeah.
There's like very weird different dialects, especially in that area of the world, and that are so difficult. Like Japanese is a good example, but I couldn't even begin to imagine what it would be like trying to learn Vietnamese.
Yeah. The thing that's a killer is it's so tonal. There's like 5 tones So
like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be racist, but that's like some of the
actually pretty
sounds.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
So anyway.
So what's like the
getting back
worst country? My bad. Sorry, go ahead.
The worst country. Oh, the worst
Like,
country.
if you had a country, do you have a country that you would not want to go back to? Or like that you haven't since you were like, oh, okay, we can just steer clear of that one. Checked it off the list. Not so far. Not so far. There's certainly countries that I enjoy spending time in more than others, but every country has a redeeming factor. We'll get you on the next time around. I'm sure there's going to be something bad coming up.
I mean, there's look,
Knock
it's
on
definitely
wood.
not all sunshine and roses.
Yeah.
There's
I mean, you're not like seeing dead bodies, right? I mean,
No.
you haven't been in a place and you're like
Not yet.
seeing like. Okay.
I haven't been to India yet. So,
Been detained by militant police for like $20.
Well, I mean, this, yeah. Go ahead.
well,
Dan.
that happens. I mean, the thing is, operating in this part of the world, and I'm not going to go into too many details, but there is corruption. To get things done, you need to buy into that system. It's quite well known that here in Vietnam, occasionally, if you run into the wrong guy at immigration at the airport, you might have to pay him some coffee money because if you don't, he'll make a stink.
Do they actually call it coffee money?
That's a fairly common phrase.
Will they
I
ask
need-
you for coffee money?
I need $100 for coffee. Like, okay,
Yeah.
here you go. Here's your coffee.
You're like,
money.
I'm trying to just get my bags checked through here, sir. He's like, you're at Starbucks now, kid.
Yeah, yes.
Welcome
Something
to
like that.
Starbucks.
Yeah.
Run your wallet.
Yeah, something like that.
What about like interesting experiences? So corruption is kind of rife in that area of the world. I think corruption's an issue that pretty much every place on Earth grapples with on some level in some form. But what have been some of your most memorable experiences? Either Thailand, Vietnam, wherever. You don't necessarily have to say specifically where. We're not asking for GPS coordinates, but what's an example of some really unique experience that you had where you're like, wow, no amount of money could buy this experience?
Yeah. Okay. So something that's interesting about corruption and about having money as an expat is that you tend to end up in the places where the locals who have money also go. And in my case, on a recent trip out of town, that was an underground poker game. I'd been quietly minding my own business in the local casino, where everything was above board, perfectly fine, small stakes cash games. And this gentleman approaches me and mentions that there's an underground tournament.
This is
happening
like James Bond. This is like
that
a James
weekend.
Bond movie. Okay.
I'm so sucked into this right now.
I actually,
Do you have an eye patch?
Yeah,
I
right?
wouldn't have been surprised.
Was he a midget with a friggin' bowler hat? Like, who
had
was
a
this guy that
briefcase.
approached you?
He had a briefcase. He was
He had a briefcase.
yeah.
Was it a
He was
Halliburton briefcase?
he was a local guy. Kind of very, very. There was nothing that particularly stuck out about him, which is probably just how he liked it.
Okay.
And so he approaches me, kind of taps me on the shoulder, and mentions that there's an underground tournament happening this weekend.
Like in that building, or
In the city.
okay.
And
Were you doing well to prompt this, or did he like just approach you because you were white?
well,
or
typically, if you're playing poker, you want people that aren't doing well because they're the ones that lose money. But
okay,
so
that answers the question.
It might have been that I was losing money, but no, I actually came out on top that game. That day, but it's tournament style, so it was like $50 buy-in with high stakes cash games afterwards if you wanted to stick around.
How long did the tournament last? How many hours? I'm kind of new to that.
Yeah, the tournament was about 5 or 6 hours.
Okay.
And then afterwards, you had if you blew out of the tournament, they had some cash games around the table where you could just buy in to the table for a couple of grand.
So this guy, this like intelligence operative, like counter espionage guy, approaches you, and is like, "There's a big stakes game happening in a secret location. Like
Yeah.
how does that go down? Like, did he give you GPS coordinates and you like showed up at this place and?
Well, he gave me a hotel to go to.
Okay.
And
you went into the library of the hotel and like pulled the book and it like
it was
swung
actually
the door.
pretty close to that. It was actually pretty close
shit.
to that.
Really?
There was, so in the foyer of the hotel, you went out the back, kind of not all the way to the office area, but halfway, and then there was just this nondescript pair of bifold doors, like just clinical, cheap, generic doors, and walking through there, behind them there was another set of bifold doors which were very, very different, that were like your ornate, like fancy gold leaf, like
carved wood.
yeah, exactly.
Wow. Was there like one of those slots?
Which had the name of the poker room on it.
Was there like an eye slot, where like you have to knock and it like goes shunk and they're like say the password and it's like you're like
it didn't go shunk, but
shunk.
There was definitely a peephole.
Okay. So you knock on the door, you say, did you have to identify yourself? Is there a passphrase like?
Well, the guy that invited me was there, so he knew.
Okay.
Was.
All right, good to go. So the doors swing open, and what do you see?
Three of the fanciest poker tables I've seen in my life. Some really comfortable chairs. Like, this place makes the casino look like shit.
Oh, man.
And there are just like scantily clad like tens just walking around in G-strings, like, or like cocktail dresses, like.
There were a couple, like the dealers were dressed up a bit. Like, there were three or four dealers milling around. There was an open bar, like food, beverages, whatever you wanted. You could order from the hotel, all in the house while you were playing. And I mean that you could tell that this group of guys had played together before. You had a mix of expats, what looked like wealthy locals. Anyway, we're just sitting down before the tournament starts, chatting. I'm meeting all the guys, and this guy walks in, and he's kind of, everyone's a bit differential. Like the chatter dies down. Everyone's kind of giving him a wide berth, and obviously being the only guy in the room that doesn't know this guy, I haven't shut up when he's come in.
Oh God!
And so the guy I'm talking to just kind of gives me the eyes that say, "Dude," and
it's
so
time.
I shut up. And
who is this guy? Who is this mystery man that commands so much respect?
This guy makes James Bond you were talking about earlier look pretty small time. Turns out that this guy was pretty high up in the government at the of this country that we're in.
So you're in a top secret high stakes poker game playing
an illegal poker game.
Illegal poker game with like a high ranking member of
official.
the government.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh my
digital
God!
nomad,
So at
man.
what point did you realize that you made a mistake?
Yeah.
Well,
Did you
I
try
made
and
a mistake.
extract yourself from the situation immediately?
Or was it
Yeah.
cool? Like, did everything work out fine?
He kind of looked at me, smiled, and then the whole situation was diffused.
Oh God.
But it could have been very, very awkward if
Was
he'd
Kiss from
had,
death.
if he'd
Are
had
there-
a bad morning.
Were there people with weapons on them? There must have been, like bodyguards in
visibly.
there.
Not visibly in that room.
Okay.
I think there was a certain standard that particular establishment was held to. But there were definitely people accompanying him who were armed, if not visibly. But you could tell by the way they carried themselves that they were.
Wait, in your travels in Southeast Asia, I mean, have you seen a lot of guns? Has that been like kind of a mainstay? AK-47s, M16s.
I wouldn't say I've seen a lot. I mean, you see the odd Uzi.
The odd Uzi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few of the embassies definitely have guards. outside posted who have AKs. It's kind of terrifying seeing this kid that looks about 14 and a half, who's probably like 18, in like the kids who are doing this guard duty. They all look really young. So you've got a street full of motorbikes. You've got this kid who's probably 18, 19, but he looks about half that. And he's standing next to this guard box with holding an AK. And
it's a condition 1 weapon. Like, he could discharge that weapon.
If he discharged that weapon, there would be
chaos.
Like tremendous chaos. The weapon itself might kill a few people.
Right, but the resulting stampede would kill
a lot more.
As we saw in Saudi Arabia recently, there was a stampede at the Hajj there, at Mecca. I think the initial reports were something like 4,000 people dead, and then that came way down to like 400, but now it's been steadily increasing. Still no accurate account of what's happening there. Again, it is Saudi Arabia, so that doesn't surprise anyone.
Place is bananas.
Well, fascinating about the digital nomad lifestyle. Any additional points that you want to make before we switch topics here?
The only other point that I really want to make is that it's definitely a very, very life-changing experience. Like any travel, it can be very hard to go home. And I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. Obviously, I want to continue growing my business.
Yeah, you're growing too from the sounds of it. Like, I wouldn't want to go anywhere either except for the places I wanted to go.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very feasible to build a proper company while doing this. I mean, it's not all just freelancing. You can actually build real wealth doing this.
All right. Now, in the pre-interview, I mentioned we did want to discuss this concept of celebrity. In the last episode, for those of you who may be listening or may have listened, we got into a brief conversation about Whoopi Goldberg and her interaction with a member of staff and the resultant fallout from that. We want to broach the conversation. So, celebrity. Do you think it's earned? Do you think that Whoopi Goldberg, for example, or whoever it is who is put in X number of years, should receive special treatment? And how do you reconcile that? If you do believe that they should receive special treatment, how do you reconcile that with the notion or the penchant that the celebrities who are receiving special treatment also just want to be treated like another human being?
Okay, so my perspective is pretty straightforward on this. I don't think it's fair to impose a different set of standards on the great unwashed masses than we impose upon the people who we hold up as role models or people to be looked up to. I mean, people aspire to celebrity, and so I think, if anything, those people should be held to a higher standard and not given any special concession, because these are the people that the vast majority of people see every day. And with that exposure, they get by default a platform from which to share views and opinions and values. And yeah, if anything, they should be held to a much higher standard, because no one ever said that they wanted to be like Joe Bloggs when they grew up. But plenty of people aspire to be like the great actors and actresses and business people who are household names.
Right, so that they should at all times be conducting themselves at a higher standard or to a level that's beyond reproach, because they are
role models by default.
Right.
And
you're literally a professional role model.
Yeah,
you gotta try to be professional on some levels.
I'm not expecting them to be perfect human beings. I mean, everyone does stuff up. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has emotions and lets them get the better of them. It's just a matter of when that happens, how you deal with it, and not demanding that concessions be made because you're tremendously wealthy or people should know who you are.
Right. Well, here's the other thing with the Whoopi thing. So, one thing that we didn't hear about, Alan, was whether or not she apologized. You know what I mean? Like, all we heard was kind of the demonization of her.
Yeah.
And we didn't hear, well, okay, so she blew up, but was there a formal apology kind of offline where she was like, look, I'm really sorry that happened. I apologize. Because that would kind of cast us in a different light.
I really just don't know, man, because, like, here's my thing about it. Like, I agree with you totally, Dan. I think that people should be conducting themselves in a higher to a higher standard, or acting, or you know what I'm saying. People should carry themselves to a higher standard when they have that level of exposure. But I think it's weird that her case was demonized so quickly when there are plenty of other celebrities who act terribly to their staff members.
Yeah.
And, like, to everyone around them, but become household names. Like, I could use Adele as a very easy one. If you, like, I remember coming across this a while ago. You could probably Google it fairly easily, but she has, like, these ridiculous requests where I only drink this water from England, like, everything in America sucks, like, blah, 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 and she says all this shit. That never comes up at all. But Whoopi Goldberg makes a slave comment, and everybody explodes.
Right.
You know? It's just it's very speculative at this point. And, like, I don't know if what she did was wrong or right. You know, I don't even think we're really in any place to say anything about it, especially with how tenured she is.
This is the question I have. Just because someone has been doing something for a long time, do they deserve, what kind of respect do they deserve?
This comes into the whole tenure argument, and I wouldn't necessarily say that duration is any indicator of deserved respect. Accomplishment, certainly. Impact, definitely. But just having done something for a long time.
She's somewhat of a legend, though. I mean, she's definitely a household name in that respect. She didn't make. I don't know. I don't think she did anything that was bad. I guess I really don't know enough about Whoopi Goldberg from that perspective to say whether what she did over a long period of time was quality or not. I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway.
The culture of disruption is such that it doesn't matter how a Ford Motor Company has been running automobile manufacturing, right? Someone like Tesla does not give a fuck. Or maybe I'm mischaracterizing it. Probably am completely. But there is a certain roguishness, a certain brashness, a certain kind of air of disrespect that an upstart naturally has by virtue of their existence as an upstart when entering into the world that was typically dominated by, the Whoopi Goldberg, who would be like the GM or the Ford. There's a certain amount of just by virtue of their very existence, Tesla could be seen as an affront to an otherwise completely Ford, GM, Toyota kind of dominated market. So
yeah, I can see that. I mean, that does make a little bit more sense because it's just a hard thing to try to judge the character of a person based on the media's portrayal of an event. And like, it's not even like I'm a massively big Whoopi Goldberg fan or anything. It's just
it's quite evident
the way
that
it
you
sounded.
You're
I love her, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a nun poster in my room. It's so great. I'm getting blessed by Whoopi.
Yes, Whoopi. What else is new? What else do we have in the news, gentlemen? We're coming up on 15 minutes to the top of the hour. I know we have 6 minutes to 10 o'clock here. Dan, do you have enough time for 6 more minutes or 16?
I can give you another 16 minutes.
All right, good to go. So, in the news, now, we had discussed Darknet a little bit. I don't know if we wanted to touch on that or if we could just segue into another news.
Well, I have you here.
Okay.
That's what I'm interested in. That's such a
Yes.
weird part of the internet that I've only recently begun to explore. So it was funny because we thought Ben, who's your other guest? I'm sorry, I forgot his name completely. The other guy we're gonna have on the rapper.
Amadeus.
Amadeus. I thought we were going to have Amadeus on, and me and Ben both are huge hip-hop fans. So I was, like, super excited, and then he said you were going to be on, and I was like, oh. I'm like, so what does that guy do? And he told me, and I got super excited. I was like, oh, that's great. This is going to be cool. I'm cool with that, too. And it's mostly because of my recent delves into the dark web.
The dark net.
Which I'm slowly starting to understand more, but it's still kind of just a mass of onion addresses.
Are you using this? Do you actively use Darknet out there in the digital nomad world? It seems like it would work perfectly. Like, are you being paid in Bitcoin? Do you transact in Bitcoin with each other? Are you using Darknet?
Yeah, I do use Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin can be done on the traditional internet as well. I mean, it's not a criminal act. The only real difference between the dark web and the web that everyone's familiar with is that one is hidden and one's not.
Well, just because it's hidden, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're transacting illegal.
No.
Yeah, there was plenty of
there's plenty of
political
legitimate
forums and
content
stuff on there as well.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I found tons of like stuff from legitimate rebels and things of that nature who were trying to like transfer data during the war and stuff that they didn't want to get picked up by somebody else. It's pretty crazy.
I guess the line I was trying to draw was more that between Bitcoin, which is mainly transacted outside the dark web, and the dark web itself. Like, they aren't really codependent.
Right.
They aren't one and the same.
So if somebody does want to start dabbling in Bitcoin, they can do so without ever having to.
Yeah, there is a huge misconception on that Bitcoin is used for drugs. My aunt actually had a long career with the DEA as like an administrator, and we were on a family trip, and I started talking about Bitcoin to one of my uncles, and I remember my mom came down the next day and was like, "Your aunt Aunt Kitchi came upstairs and said that you were talking about like some drug money thing on the internet." I'm like, no, I was just talking about Bitcoin. It's not drug money.
Yeah, I actually withdrew cash for the first time at a Bitcoin ATM recently.
Oh wow, how was that?
It was interesting. It was very interesting.
Weird.
I mean, basically what you do is you take a photo of a QR code on the machine, which is it's like a temporary short-term wallet address that disappears after a while. And you send the money there, and then the machine spits it out.
Crazy. And then that wallet just dumps it into whatever their main account is and then dissolves.
Yeah.
That's cool. Man, what do you think the future for Bitcoin is? Do you have any input on that? Like, do you think it's going to continue in the direction it's going, or is it going to crash more? Because I remember like a couple of years ago, it was like $700 for a Bitcoin, and now I think last time I checked, it's like more in the 240 range.
Yeah, it's been fluctuating between 240 and 360. It's been pretty steady in that range.
Yeah.
Bitcoin's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. The fact that it's not backed by an authority means that there is a cap on the value of it. It's really only worth money as long as people say it's worth money.
Yeah, that's the whole thing behind it. It's whatever you give value has value. I can hand you shells and call it Bitcoin and say that 10 of them are worth $5,000. If you believe me, then convince other people that to also believe that those shells are worth $10,000, then they are.
Yeah. The problem with Bitcoin is that obviously it meets most of the hallmarks of being a currency. There's a finite supply. There's a free market trading it. But it's too volatile to be used as a store of wealth. And so I see Bitcoin's primary function being facilitating new forms of transaction, like collecting payments. For me, has always been difficult because I don't know whether you've ever tried to transfer like wire money from Europe to Australia, but for some reason I've been struggling back and forth with my Danish customers for quite a while. And with Bitcoin...
International banking is so difficult.
Yeah. I see Bitcoin being more as an international banking and monetary transfer system rather than being an actual replacement for fiat currency.
Mm-hmm. There's also, I mean, there's a limit on how many hashes in the blockchain, or how much longer Bitcoin can be hashed, right? Like, aren't there efforts to attempt to extend Bitcoin with kind of side chains or different ways to extend functionality of Bitcoin? Because once it's all been mined, I mean,
there's no more. Yeah,
well, no,
it's in circulation, period, isn't it?
Okay, so that's a bit of a misconception. Like, the blockchain will never end. Mm-hmm. Like, you never run out of blocks. Mm-hmm. It's just the model changes. So what's been... Okay, so the model is basically the guy that created Bitcoin. We only know him by his screen name, Satoshi. He was very, very, very smart. The currency algorithm has two parts to it, two ways to earn Bitcoin, as it were. So when the network is small and the number of coins in existence is low, the difficulty for generating new coins through mining is much easier. As the network grows, mining still returns a certain number of coins, but the coins issued over time looks like a log curve. So we're currently towards the 3/4 mark of the log curve, where it's starting to peter out, and the returns are getting lower and lower. But the magic of the algorithm is that the act of mining also processes transactions and locks them in.
Right.
So that establishes you're securing the network.
Yeah. So like the more you mine, basically, the more the network is being encrypted, correct? And that's why you're being rewarded with Bitcoin for that.
Yeah. So previously, the reward model was just the creation of new Bitcoins out of thin air, as it were. Pardon me for a sec.
Yeah, Bitcoin is such a fascinating.
And sorry.
Go ahead.
So previously the motivation was the creation of new Bitcoins, but now the motivation is collecting transaction fees from the people who are processing transactions through the network. Now, the fee structure is interesting because you can attach a fee to your transaction to get it mined or processed faster. So you could, for example, say that you'll pay a premium fee to have your transaction block prioritized over other people's transaction blocks.
I see. And you're paying Bitcoin for this?
Yes, you are. You're paying a fractional percentage of the value of the transfer. Much like a typical payment network, except the percentages are much lower. This is something I could see hindering adoption, because as demand for transactions grows, the fees will go up as people try to push their transactions through the system faster and faster. Eventually it'll reach an equilibrium where people are not comfortable paying more, and miners aren't comfortable accepting less.
Isn't there some risk in terms of like who controls this currency as well? Because like before it was known like, okay, no one person can control, but then you had pools starting to form where you'd have a group of people who could basically short the currency in some effect and like drop the value overnight. Like they could actively manipulate the value based on I don't know, something that they were doing there.
You would have to have a large group of people though, or one guy buying a ton of it at once, right?
Or a lot of
market like that.
Power.
Manipulation has happened, and the processing power required to take over the network is tremendous. You would need to have personal control over more than 50% of the network.
Okay.
Which is absurd. Maybe you would have to be Google.
Even Google, I think, would have a hard time doing it, simply because they would have to shut down their entire operation. And even then, the thing is, people have been buying these super specific encryption chips. So they're literally hardware devices that have been built purely to mine Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen those rigs. Like people
AJ
sell
got
them
one
as
of
quote
those.
unquote rigs to mine coin. AJ's more invested into Litecoin from what I hear, which is kind of interesting that there's different currencies.
Yeah, but he
with
bought
the same idea.
he bought one of those specific chips that's like designed only to hash whatever. Hash Bitcoin or hash coin.
Those things are so good at what they do that just if you're a person trying to take over the network, you've got to you'd have to buy those things by the shipload.
By like the pallets.
Yeah, you'd have to buy containers and containers and containers of them.
I've seen huge Bitcoin mining operations in China where they're like have entire warehouses, like floors of warehouses with fans at full blast, or they're using like oil baths where they like submerge the chips in mineral oil or whatever it is to keep them cool. China is basically producing the majority of Bitcoin currently. I think that's ongoing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. At some point, though, it just becomes more expensive to set up the equipment than it does to like the potential value in taking over the network.
Mm-hmm. Do you see? Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Do you see Bitcoin taking over currency like as we know it? Do you see?
No way.
No.
Or a form of cryptocurrency, not Bitcoin specifically, because cryptocurrency as a whole still hasn't really been developed to probably its highest form. There has to be a better way to do it than we're doing it now, just like anything else.
Do you see cryptocurrency taking over traditional forms of currency ever?
I personally don't. It doesn't have the requisite hallmarks to replace fiat currency.
What are those hallmarks that are necessary?
Okay, so people, like, you're never going to get the average person to put their money in Bitcoin because they all want a central issuing authority to offload their responsibility for their money onto.
Isn't that the blockchain, though? Isn't the blockchain itself the central issuing authority?
Yeah, but they want a guarantee of the value of their currency. They want to make sure that it won't devalue overnight.
So they basically want a government to like back it.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
if the U.S. backed a cryptocurrency, would you change your judgment on that?
I would, but the U.S. would never back a cryptocurrency. It's not in their best interest.
Yeah, they have no control.
The key thing is that there is literally no difference between the US dollar and Bitcoin in terms of how much intrinsic value it has.
Mm-hmm.
You're basically just trading within a forex, technically, like because Bitcoin fluctuates so often. You probably could make money just swapping it in and out of USD and Bitcoin.
Oh, you absolutely could, and there are people that do that. I know a bunch of them. The thing you need for popular adoption, though, is people need to be emotionally content or secure in the idea that their wealth is being stored somewhere that is safe. Now, no fiat currency is safe. No cryptocurrency is safe. They both have the same fundamental problem of what's this worth? Where does this value come from? And if the authority that tells me this is worth a potato all of a sudden stops saying it's worth a potato, I've got this useless piece of paper. But people have more faith in the banks for some reason. And
Mount Gox was specifically in relation to Bitcoin, correct?
Sweet Mount Gox.
Now, do you think that the Bitcoin devalued in part because of the whole Mount Gox scandal, or do you think that was just bound to happen anyway?
I think the Mount Gox scandal accelerated the devaluation, but I think it would have reached this point organically, even without that influence. All that Mount Gox did was put the brakes on the hype train a bit, because Bitcoin was horrendously overvalued.
Yeah, it was crazy to say that one Bitcoin is worth $700. And I think it was because it blew up so big when that there was that urban legend that came out. I actually just read about it the other day, where the guy had bought a dude a pizza over, like, with Bitcoin, basically, over the internet. He's like, order me a pizza, I'll give you some Bitcoin. And then later that guy found out he had like $10 million worth of Bitcoin or something saved on a hard drive he forgot about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
crazy.
It's just one of those things where it really it just doesn't have enough practical application for most people beyond transferring wealth from one place to another with minimal fees, which is why I see it developing more into a payments system rather than a wealth store. Because something that is that volatile is just...
It's not really smart to invest your money in. It goes up and down so much.
I'm curious to know, like, how did Bitcoin react to the yuan devaluation? Because that was a long time coming too.
Yeah. Bitcoin itself didn't react that much, surprisingly. It seems to be relatively independent of most financial markets.
So it's kind of insulated in that respect.
It is, but within its own little world, it's like a toddler. It just it can be really, really cool, and then it can just go nuts.
Yeah.
So it's very much a law unto itself, which is why I try and hold as little Bitcoin as I possibly can.
Okay, yeah. So you're not. That was my next question. You're not actively like using it. You used the ATM the other day, but
I use Bitcoin for transactional stuff, but I keep all of my money in established fiat currencies.
I see.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense that way because it's going to be a lot more stable.
Yeah.
You do quick transfers through Bitcoin, you're going to avoid fees and whatnot, but holding it in there, you either have the potential to go up or go down. And if you go down, then you didn't get paid your full paycheck. So you got to wait for it to go back up before you sell it again.
Well, where I'm looking at the time, we're just past the 1 hour mark. Dan, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. It was an enlightening conversation. Do you have anything?
Great, man.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you'd like to promote or anything that you'd like to advertise? Anything like that?
No, that's not really how I roll. I've got plenty going on as it is, but it was great to come on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'd love to have you on again in the future. I mean, if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to jump back.
Yeah, it was super good to meet you, man. It was a real fun talk.
Absolutely. So just our rider here at the end. If you're looking to support this podcast, again, we're completely this is to the masses. If you're looking to support this podcast, we're always looking for sponsors, for patrons. Please click our PayPal link and donate to our podcast. We appreciate every bit of money that we get from you guys to help continue this adventure, this experiment.
It's gonna get better as we go too, and I'm really, this has become a priority for me because I enjoy it and I like talking to Ben and Ben's interesting friends. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, the whole goal is for us to be able to do this like professionally. It would be great. And on that note, also I forgot we got to tag this hashtag Nomads. It's spelled HASH tag Nomads. .com. If you were interested in becoming a digital nomad, apparently that's a very good place to start. Seems pretty open to everybody. You probably want to go there.
Let's not forget Trailer Park Master Chef, which is Alan's project where he's making food, right? I mean, what is the mission, Trailer Park Master Chef?
I love cooking, so we've gone over this a couple times, but my father was a restaurant manager for a very long time. I got a chance to pick up some skills from him, and in the last couple of years, I've been banging my head against a cutting board, and I've gotten pretty good at what I've been doing. So my whole goal, I live in a mobile home, so my whole goal is to kind of dispel the myth about people that live in trailers through food.
Outstanding. That's quite the mission. I support that.
It's fun. I grow all my own. I try to grow as much as my food as I can. We do normal vegetables, stuff like that. I haven't bought peppers in probably like 4 months. I got habaneros, all kinds of stuff. And I do anything from béarnaise sauces from scratch, like whole filet mignon roasts, things like that I've had a chance to mess with. And I think it's going pretty good so far.
Outstanding. Looking forward to the next photographs, next recipes.
Yeah.
Also, tune into our website, getbusypodcast.com. We have more information there, blog posts, etc. The podcasts are archived there. Again, thank you very much, Dan.
Yeah,
and,
anytime. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you all next time.
Later.
Peace.
See you later.